you and welcome to today's maths lesson. Now in our maths lesson today we are going to be looking at a brand new type of graph called a block diagram. Now I wonder how a block diagram is different to a tally chart or a pictogram. Well, we'll find out in a little while, but before we do, let's warm up our brains with our flashback. So here is your flashback. You have 3 questions. In the first question you need to work out how many more cones there are than balls. Okay, so you are finding the difference. What did you need to do to find the difference? Now number 2, find the sum, the total of 4, 9 and 6. Now we have done a lot of questions like this. Can you spot the 2 numbers that jump out at us and use this to help you answer the question? Then number 3, you need to use the less than, the more than or the equals to sign to compare the 2 multiplication number sentences. Okay, so pause the video now and have a go. Okay, year 2, so let's have a look at the first question. Well, it says, how many more cones are there than balls? And if we look at the key, we can see that 1 blue square equals 10 items. Now, if we know that 1 blue square equals 10 items, how many blue squares are there next to cones? Well, there are 6 blue squares. So we are going to have to do 6 multiplied by 10 because there are 6 squares and each square represents 10 items. So let's count together in steps of 10 6 times, okay? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Stop, we've counted 6 steps of 10 and what did we get to? Yes, we got to 60. So there are 60 cones. Now, how many are there in the balls part of the pictogram? Yes, there are 4 blue squares. So we're going to have to do 4 multiplied by 10. Now, can you tell me when to stop this time? Okay, 10, 20, 30, 40. Yes, you're right. I need to stop, don't I? Because I have counted 4 steps of 10 and I got to 40. So now we know how many of each item there is. We need to find the difference, and to find the difference we need to do a subtraction. So we need to do 60 because there are the most cones, subtract 40. Now to help us, what is 6 subtract 4? Yes, 6 subtract 4 equals 2, doesn't it? So therefore if we know that, we also know that 60 subtract 40 equals 20. We've just multiplied all of the numbers by 10. Now, number 2, we need to find the sum or the total of 4, 9 and 6. What 2 numbers jump out at us, year 2? Yes, you're right. It's 4 and 6. And why is that? Well, it's because they add together to equal 10. It's one of our number bonds to 10. So now we just need to add the other number. What's 10 plus 9? Yes, it's 19. Fantastic. Okay, number 3, use less than, more than or equals to compare the 2 multiplication number sentences. Well, what did you notice about these 2 number sentences? Yes, they're using the same numbers, aren't they? They're just swapped around, aren't they? We've got 2 multiplied by 5 and 5 multiplied by 2. So we can use commutative law to change the parts around, can't we? So that's what's happened here. Now, what do we know about commutative law? Well, yes, it will give the same answer, won't it? So 2 multiplied by 5, or 5, 10 is 10. So that means that 5 multiplied by 2 will also give us the answer 10. And therefore, we need the equals to sign. Fantastic. Well done if you got those right. Now let's move on to today's learning. So I'll unshare my screen with you. Okay, hello year 2. So as I said, today we are looking at a graph called a block diagram. Now let's find out what one of these looks like. Oh. So here is a block diagram. Now you can see that there are blocks on this graph. Can you see each of the blocks? Now I wonder what those are used for. Well, down the bottom we have car, bike, lorry, bus and motorbike. Now the axis down here, so this is called an axis, is called the x-axis. It is horizontal, okay? And the x-axis tells us the types of items. So yes, we've got different types of transport. We've got car, bike, lorry, bus, and motorbike. So that is the x-axis. And we also have the y-axis that is vertical. It goes up. And what does this show us? Well, can you see the numbers here? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going up in steps of 1. And the y-axis tells us the number of items. So if we have a look at car, can you see the colour goes all the way to here? So that means that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks coloured in. So we know that there are 5 cars. Now for this block diagram, it goes up in ones, but that's not the case for all block diagrams. And we'll have a look at that later on in our lesson. So we are going to find out how we can turn some data into a block diagram. Now our block diagram for today, our first block diagram, is about the different animals seen at the zoo. So we've got our items on our x-axis. So the L stands for lion, the E stands for elephant, the P stands for panda, and the M stands for monkey. And then, like the block diagram that we've just seen, it goes up in steps of 1 for this one. So each block, when it's coloured, is going to represent 1. And then if another one's coloured, it will represent 2. So after you've coloured the block, you need to look at the number that's on top of it, and that will tell you how many there are. So we're going to use a pictogram to help us create our block diagram. So we're going to use the data from this pictogram to create our block diagram. Well, we can see that we have 1 green square equals 1 animal. Now, how many squares are there for lions? Well, yes, there are 4 squares for lions, which means there are 4 lions because each square represents 1 animal. So let's look at this on our block diagram. Now, there are 4 lions, and we know that each block on this pictogram equals 1, okay? So each block that we colour in will represent 1 item. So if we colour in, I'm not going to colour in the whole thing, I'm just going to do lines to show that it's coloured in. Okay, so I've got my first block coloured in. So how many lines does this represent? Well, if we look at the line above the coloured in line, we can see that the number next to that is 1. So we need to keep going, don't we? Because there are 4 lions at the zoo. So let's colour in another one. Okay, how many lines are there now? Yes, there are 2 lines now because look, there's our line and there's the number 2. Okay, let's try another one. There we go. Now we know that there's 3 because look, the line has 3 next to it. And how many lines were there? There were 4 lines. So we need to colour in another one. Now, how many lines are there now? Oh, look, can you see the line here? If we go across, takes us to the number 4. So therefore, we have shown the 4 lions on our block diagram. So now let's have a look at the elephants. So how many elephants are there? Well, if 1 square represents 1 elephant, 2 squares is going to represent 2 elephants. So we need to show 2 elephants on our block diagram. So remember, each block represents 1. So I'm going to colour in 1 block. Now, how many elephants does that represent? Well, yes, look, if we follow our finger across, we get to 1. So that represents 1 elephant. But we need to represent 2 elephants. So we're going to have to colour in another block, aren't we? There we go. So there's my another block coloured in. Now, have I got enough elephants on my block diagram now? Well, let's have a look. Let me follow the line across. And look, I get to the number 2, and there were 2 elephants. So we have filled that out correctly. Now, you will find this this block diagram on your resource, Year 2 Maths, 11th of February, Resource 1. And I would like you to fill out the block diagram for me for pandas and monkeys, and then come back to the video.